Hi guys, I don't know how well this is going to work. The sun's quite bright over there. It's the first time I've walked up the hill behind the house since I was ill with COVID, and it took quite a while. It took me quite a while to get my breath back once I got up here, and normally I run up here and keep going for miles and miles and miles, so that shows the state I'm in after a month of coming out of hospital, I suppose. Recovery is very slow. I've described it before as being sort of incremental, maybe a little bit each day, and I'm thankful that at least it's going the right way. But some days it's really difficult to even notice any positives in it, and the whole process becomes quite sort of depressing, and it grinds you down. And again, I don't want to be all sort of woe is me and I'm used to being super fit and all the rest of it. And yeah, that's definitely an element of this, because I am used to be able to run up this hill and keep going, and I'm not used to being out of breath walking across the living room at home, or having to go for a lie down after I've done the hoovering or whatever. It's ridiculous really, but I don't want to make too much of that, because I know there's like a lot of people have had it much worse. But I just want to sort of get the message across really, because I know a lot of people, I mean, there's the morons who think it's all a hoax and it's nothing, and the anti-vaxxers and the anti-lockdown. Well, those people are just utter complete morons. I've got no time for them at all. I'm a pacifist, but if one walked by now and started talking like that, I'd struggle to keep my hands off them, to be perfectly honest. So yeah, I'd say utter idiots, and dangerous, damaging idiots as well. But yeah, I mean, it's not a hoax. It's a genuinely serious thing. 120,000 people have died in the UK, 500,000 in the States, and our two governments have probably been the worst offenders at dealing with the virus, really, when you look around the world and look at the statistics. There's no getting away from that. But anyway, on a personal level, I mean, we got it about a week or so after New Year, I suppose, and we're fairly certain that we got it from the kids, because they'd been in contact with people who were positive over Christmas, and also had been to school, and they were always likely to be in contact with somebody with it, because they hadn't been locked down like the rest of us had. They'd been encouraged to keep going to school and all that sort of stuff. So it wasn't much of a surprise when Sue and I started to get a bit poorly. But for the first 3 or 4 days, we both remarked that it wasn't too bad. We hadn't heard of COVID. It would just be like we've just picked up a little winter bug. It was nothing. But then I had this horrendous night, which I've talked to some people about, which is quite bizarre and surreal, where it was like being on a bad drug trip. Not that I've ever had anything, not even an ordinary cigarette. But I think I know what a bad trip's like, from what people have told me. And I was wide awake in bed with all these visions in front of me of like computer screens and news articles just firing at me, and I couldn't turn it all off. It was just brain overload, completely bizarre. And because we'd watched the film Tenet recently, some of these news articles, I was trying to turn them off. I realised I was actually turning them on, because time was running backwards with some of these things that were coming at my head and coming at my brain, and that just added to the surreal nature and the completely confusing and bizarre nature of the whole thing, really. But at some point I managed to get back to sleep, but by the time I woke up in the morning, I felt so sick, really sort of nauseous. Wasn't actually sick, but for all of that day really, I didn't dare eat anything because I felt sick. Eventually I think I had some mackerel on a bagel or something fairly sort of relatively neutral and tasty. I thought would tickle my taste buds. That just made me feel worse. But that sickness just lasted one day. Then the next day I woke up with the most awful pains just through my body. Every inch of me ached really, really badly. And I'm not one for taking painkillers, because I don't normally get things like this. But I started to take paracetamols, and they had almost no effect. So I dialed the NHS 111 phone number and explained this to a doctor, and she prescribed me cocodamols, which obviously are a lot stronger, a bit like sort of horse knockout pills for me, who's never had anything like that. But I took 2 of those before I went to bed, and I actually had a really good night. Okay, phone ran out of memory, what was telling me it was close to, so I've had to use the Nikon now, so it's going to be harder to hold up. It's damn sight heavier. And we'll see if the microphone's any more effective at dealing with wind noise. But anyway, yeah, I think I was saying how I'd had these terrible aches and pains for a day and a night, not being able to sleep. But then the doctor prescribed me these cocodamols, the stronger painkillers, and I actually managed to get a really good night's sleep. Unfortunately, when I woke up in the morning, I could barely breathe, and it was deja vu with the pneumonia that I had almost exactly a year ago to the day, January 2020. And except that back then I was fine if I was sitting still or just walking on the flat, but if I walked upstairs I was really out of breath, and it was like having a panic attack. I just literally couldn't catch my breath. And then I found out I'd got this acute pneumonia and blood clots on my lungs and all manner of stuff. But this was worse than that, because I was laid in bed, I wasn't moving, and I was struggling to breathe. And so I tried to catch my breath, and I'm quite good at relaxation exercises and those sorts of things to get my breathing regular and sort of level and sorted out. And I really struggled, but I did eventually. Then I went to the bathroom, and that tired me out. And I was getting really concerned because I hadn't done anything physical. So I'm afraid at about 6:30 in the morning, or some ridiculous time, I was on the phone again to NHS 111. Told the doctor what was going on, and obviously I was COVID positive as well. So it was an escalation in that, and she basically ordered an ambulance round and paramedics. So I got up, those guys came round, took my vitals, did a whole load of things. They were excellent, really, really good. In fact, the medical care, including the NHS 111 throughout all this, just been magnificent. Can't fault them. Absolutely not. Anybody wants to start arguing about the ineffectiveness of the NHS or their staff, again, got to go through me, I'm afraid. But anyway, the long short of it was that they took one look at me, and my blood oxygen was ridiculously low. They also found, bizarrely, a sort of strange flutter on my heartbeat, which I'd never had before. And one of the things they checked when I was in with the pneumonia the year before was my heart, because men in my family have suffered with heart disease as they got older, but not a problem. And my heart was really, really strong last year. And then there was this really strange little thing that it was barely detectable apparently, and I certainly couldn't feel it. There was no palpitations or no racing heartbeat or anything like that. But they said that there was a little irregularity, and it was probably one of the auricles was just slightly out of sync with the rest of my heart, and it could have been connected to the infection, or could have been something else. So that's still on the back burner. Actually, I've got to go back to hospital at some point and have that checked out and see whether it was just part of COVID and now I'm okay, or whether something else needs to be treated. But anyway, that's another whole other discussion. So they took me into hospital. Paramedics in the ambulance. My first ever ride in an ambulance as a patient. It's all firsts this last 12 months. So anyway, got into the ward, first ward I was on. There was a cheery guy in the bed next to me. He said, "I've got bloody COVID for the second time. I was one of the first people in the country to get COVID. I was in here last February." And a poor guy had been on a Far East cruise apparently, and he picked it up over there and then got it again over Christmas, and he'd been in hospital since. Was really quite poorly with it and incredibly fed up with it. Anyway, going back to me, without getting out of breath again, because that's the other strange side effect of this. I get out of breath when I'm talking as well, which just shows my blood oxygen is still a ridiculously low level compared to what it normally is. But anyway, eventually I was moved on to a permanent ward that was just sort of admissions and observation stuff. And blood oxygen was really down, and so they put me on the tube for a bit. That didn't work, so I ended up for a couple of days with an oxygen mask on and 6 litres of oxygen going into me, which was considerably more than I'd had last year with the pneumonia. I think the most I was on was 2, and most of the time I was on 1 litre, but they had to bang me onto 6 with this. And it was about a 10-yard walk from my bed to the bathroom, which I could manage that without the oxygen, but I had to take it steady and sit down when I got there. So that was fairly fairly worrying really that again, it's interesting to compare with the pneumonia that was 12 months before, because a lot of the symptoms were the same. The breathlessness was almost identical, although I think it was slightly worse with the COVID. But with the pneumonia, the moment they started to pump steroids and antibiotics into me and put me on oxygen, it was like getting a Superman injection. That I could feel the recovery starting literally almost immediately. But with the COVID, no, not at all. No, it took days before the blood oxygen started to sneak up above 92, you know, and it was even lower a couple of times. And they wanted me to be up at least at 96 before they even considered letting me out, and it just wouldn't get even close. And that was on the oxygen. But eventually, it did start to sneak up. And the breathlessness eased, and they were doing bloods 2 or 3 times a day and checking on those, checking the white blood cell count and the level of virus in me and all sorts of things. And they did slowly start to see an improvement. Now, again, with the pneumonia, I could have been in and out within 3 days. I was actually out after 4 days, but it was only because there was a weekend in the way and they didn't have any admin staff on at the weekend. And everybody was rushed off the feet because of this pneumonia epidemic that was banging around last January. So I was in for 4 days, but the last day I was 100% fit. You know, I could have run home. But with the COVID, I was in for a week, and only the last couple of days really started to feel any recovery at all, any improvement. And there was also a bit of a near miss, bit of a shock right at the end, where the doctor had come and said, yeah, well, you can go home later today because everything's sort of going in the right direction. And then he came back an hour or 2 later and said, we've had another look at your bloods, and there's some worrying signs that the infection might be going back up again. I think it might be taking hold because some of the negative signs are increasing when we hadn't noticed it before. So I'm afraid I was in going home mode. So I you've seen me rants on Facebook probably. I can swear with the best of them. And this poor old doctor got a mouthful. And I did apologise most profusely later, and so did he actually, because eventually he went back, talked to his boss, and they decided that these negative signs that had worried them so much weren't that bad really, and that they could still send me home. So I did go back home. But as I say, it's a month now since I've been back home. I must be getting better because I'm sat here up on the top of the hill. And I couldn't have done that in the first week of coming out of hospital. But I don't feel anything like how I should. And of course, I'm aware that some people have had these long COVID symptoms for 12 months. Some people that got the virus in the first wave are still suffering the effects of it. And I know one guy who had it fairly early on, and then had long COVID symptoms, coughs and breathlessness, occasionally tight chest, all these sorts of strange things. Thought it had gone in October. He had a clear week in October. Then it came back again, the damn thing. Not the actual virus, but the long COVID symptoms, which for him were tight chest and breathlessness. And again, he's a very fit guy. He's probably fitter than I am. But my symptoms really are just the breathlessness. Because other people, I've got a cough. I've got a niggly dry cough, which I didn't have when I had the virus, which is an odd thing because a persistent cough is one of the signs of COVID, isn't it? With a high temperature and various other things, lack of taste and all the rest of it. I never lost my taste or smell either. I had a short period where everything tasted metallic, maybe a day or so, less than a day. And again, a lot of people have told me that they've had that, but I've always had a sense of taste and smell. That's never gone. But say when I was ill and in hospital, when I had the virus, never had a cough. I maybe coughed once or twice just to clear my throat, nothing. But since I've come out, I've had this very niggly, nasty little dry cough that just drives you insane. Touch wood, the last couple of days, that seems to be getting better. I mean, I don't think I've coughed much while doing this video, and that's that's often how you notice these things, isn't it? That you suddenly think, oh, I haven't coughed for a while, or yeah, just had a little bit of a break in the recording there. Can't remember where I'd got to. I think I was saying how the last couple of days I've noticed that this nasty little cough seems to be slowly going, and I haven't noticed that I'd coughed for a while, which is often how these things happen, that you just think, I haven't coughed for a while, or I haven't felt sick for a while. So that's a positive. The breathlessness is a pain. I've got no shortage of energy. A lot of people have said that post-COVID they've just lacked energy and not been able to do anything. I've got more energy than I know what to do with. That's part of the problem. I'm full of pent-up energy and I want to get out and do stuff, but my lungs won't let me. So we'll just sort of see how that goes. And I'm doing my deep breathing exercises, which have been fairly well documented to get your lungs back working again. And maybe do more of this, really, just more push myself up the hill, even if I get out of breath. I mean, I've started to try and run up the stairs to do these little things to actually make my lungs work harder, because I'm sure just sitting on the laptop or watching films, rest might be good for me and all the rest of it, but it's not exercising my lungs, and that's what I want. I've just got to kickstart them somehow, get them back used to coping with some sort of load and having to work. We can all sit still on the settee, while away the days and the years, and hardly anything gets used. But no, I want to get back running. I want to be going up mountains later this year, and yeah, maybe I'm spending too long comparing it to the acute pneumonia last year, because that was the worst thing I'd ever had in my life. The only time I've been in hospital, the only time I've been seriously ill in my life. And I recovered in 3 or 4 days really from that, and less than a month after I came out of hospital, the kids and I were on the Isle of Skye in unbelievably bad weather, going up mountains and doing walks and all sorts of stuff. And I wouldn't say that was 100%. Some of you saw I did these little videos throughout the summer, didn't I, when I was getting back running again and stuff. And I remember saying that I didn't think my lungs had recovered completely, and I threw about the number of 85%, and I said, feels like my lungs are sort of about 85% capacity compared to what they used to be. Now they're at about 10, seriously. So a lot has got to change, and I'm getting older anyway, so, even if I didn't have pneumonia last year and I didn't have COVID this year, I'm 64 in about 3 weeks or something. I'm bound not to be as fit at 64 as I was at 60. And when I was at 60, I wasn't as fit as I was at 50. But these things can deteriorate very, very quickly. My fitness throughout my 50s was pretty good, and wasn't a lot worse than when I was in my 40s. And I managed to keep those levels sort of up. And I'd hope to keep doing that, really, to keep up with the kids. I mean, the kids are 18 now, for crying out loud. I want to be able to keep doing stuff with them as long as I can. And physical fitness is obviously part of that. Don't want to be an old dad, even though I am an old dad, you know what I mean? So, got to keep working at the damn thing. And weather like this helps, getting out up the hill. It's pretty good. There's a 3/4 moon up there. Sun's going to set in about 10 minutes probably. But yeah, it's a long old haul, and I don't think, people who've had the virus, and well, some people had it and not even known they've had it, have they? But other people have had it and coasted through it. Others have been a heck of a lot worse than me, but it's quite difficult to appreciate, because it's not well documented yet. Quite difficult to appreciate the effects it does have on you. And I'm more than aware that people have had it a heck of a lot worse than I had it. Heck of a lot worse. So I don't want to be too moany. But the selfish part of me wants to get right, and get right quick. So we'll see. This has been a bit of a rambling old video. We'll see whether I post it anywhere. But I've been promising to do it for some time. So yeah, for better or worse. Might even throw in some silly photos that I took of myself in hospital with my phone. A very, very poorly man with his mask on. And then the cheerful man as he left, not knowing that it was going to be a very, very, very slow road. So yeah, anyway, might get a sunset soon, and that'll cheer me up no end, then go home and have some warmed up lasagna. Catch you later.